Let's just jump right into this explainer because there is a massive, and I mean systemic, shift happening in healthcare administration right now. If you've been tracking institutional priorities lately, you already know sustainability isn't just some trendy buzzword anymore, right? We're way past the lip service phase. What we're actually looking at today is how environmental responsibility is literally rewriting the rules of healthcare delivery. It's changing organizational standards from the ground up, completely overhauling what it actually means to provide quality care. To really wrap our heads around the sheer scale of this, we've got to ask a fundamental question. Is being green finally crossing over from a simple PR move to a hard and fast, mandatory accreditation standard? I mean, historically, hospitals maybe planted a tree on Arbor Day, right? Swapped out a few light bulbs, threw a blue bin in the cafeteria, and called it a day. Classic greenwashing. But looking at the source material now, a totally different, way more rigorous framework is emerging. The era of optional environmentalism in medicine, yeah, that's over. We're going to unpack exactly how and why sustainability is becoming an absolute, non-negotiable metric for healthcare systems worldwide, and why accreditation bodies are suddenly zeroing in on hospital carbon footprints.
Section 1. A new healthcare standard.
So there's this really distinct paradigm shift happening up at the executive level. For the longest time, sustainability was treated pretty much just as an organizational image issue. A nice-to-have bullet point for the annual marketing brochure to make the hospital look super community-friendly. But recent global discussions around quality and accreditation, they've completely flipped that script. Now, sustainable practices are explicitly tied to patient safety, operational excellence, and long-term system resilience. Just think about recent global supply chain disruptions. When extreme weather hits or resources dry up, a hospital that relies on this immense, never-ending stream of disposable goods is incredibly vulnerable. We're no longer defining sustainability as just an image thing. It's a core component of how a hospital literally survives, adapts, and functions under intense pressure. And that brings us to this incredibly demanding new mandate. Healthcare systems are now being challenged to hit 4 very specific marks. Care has to be effective, it has to be safe, but it also absolutely must be environmentally responsible and resource conscious. Now, for decades, clinical safety usually came at the expense of just massive, unchecked waste. Think about a modern operating room. For one single surgery, mountains of blue sterile wrap and single-use plastics are ripped open, used for maybe a few minutes, and then immediately tossed, all in the name of infection control. But the system is finally being forced to innovate. You simply can't throw away tons of plastic anymore and pretend there's no environmental impact. The industry is being pushed to balance top-tier clinical safety with real environmental responsibility, turning the whole concept into a massive strategic quality priority. Section 2. What the evidence says. These standards aren't just changing out of nowhere. They're changing because the data is literally impossible to ignore. Recent reports explicitly call out healthcare systems themselves as massive contributors to global waste and carbon emissions. Just to put this into perspective for you, if the global healthcare sector were its own country, it would be the 5th largest greenhouse gas emitter on Earth. It accounts for over 4% of global net emissions. It's wild to think about, right? The industry entirely dedicated to healing is, ironically, a huge driver of environmental harm. That staggering reality is exactly why accreditation organizations are finally baking sustainability indicators directly into their performance frameworks. They want measurable change. Plus, the data clearly shows that cutting medical waste and improving resource utilization actually boosts operational efficiency. It forces these environments to be leaner, smarter, and ultimately much safer. Which leads us perfectly into a really vital concept for the future of accreditation: green healthcare systems. These are defined as climate-resilient care models that improves operational efficiency and support safer care environments, specifically by reducing medical waste and improving resource utilization. And the sheer brilliance of this model is that it's a total win-win. Cutting waste doesn't just shrink a hospital's carbon footprint, it directly creates a safer space. Less physical waste means less clutter in the halls, lower infection risks from overflowing biohazard bins, and wildly lower disposal fees. I mean, every single dollar saved on hauling away literal tons of medical waste is a dollar that gets redirected right back into direct patient care and staffing. It really is the ultimate roadmap for modern healthcare administration. Section 3. The missing frontline voice. Now, when we start talking about massive systemic waste, we really have to look at who is physically handling these materials day in and day out. Nurses are at the absolute epicenter of clinical waste generation. Just picture a nurse prepping for a super standard procedure, maybe starting an IV. You've got the plastic wrap for the tourniquet, the plastic backing on the sterile drape, the syringe packaging, the caps, the flushes. Mountains of packaging are opened, used for a few fleeting seconds, and then trashed for just one routine interaction. Now, multiply that by every patient, every room, every single hour of every shift. Nurses are dictating resource utilization in real time. They are the ones constantly managing these single-use supplies, making them the undeniable drivers of daily operational efficiency. They are carrying the absolute heaviest burden of sustainability.
But here is where we hit a profound irony. The text right from our source material lays it out incredibly starkly. Yet nurses are still underrepresented in sustainability planning and policy discussions within many healthcare organizations. Let that sink in. Despite being absolutely on the front lines of waste generation, the very people who physically open the packaging and sort the waste are almost entirely excluded from the high-level policy discussions that shape these very accreditation standards. There is this massive structural disconnect between the boardroom, where all the green initiatives are dreamed up, and the bedside, where the waste is actually being generated.
Section 4. Sustainability at the bedside.
And this quote right here just brilliantly captures the core reality of our entire explainer today. Sustainability is not only a management responsibility, it is a bedside practice. You can draft all the brilliant, ambitious performance frameworks you want. An executive team can go out and buy all the color-coded recycling bins in the world. But if a slammed ICU nurse doesn't have the time, the workflow, or the training to properly segregate waste during a critical moment, the entire top-down policy just fails instantly. True systemic change relies entirely on the daily execution of care by bedside professionals. It's incredibly clear. Administrators can mandate the standards all day long, but clinicians are the ones who actually have to execute them. Without clinical buy-in, sustainable healthcare is pretty much just a myth. Let's think about a single patient interaction as a rapid-fire sequence. Step 1, a clinical decision is made to give a treatment. Bam! That decision instantly triggers step 2, a supply choice. The practitioner grabs a specific kit or a specific tool, and then that choice dictates step 3, the workflow process for how that supply is actually used and ultimately tossed in the trash or the recycling. Multiply that quick 3-step sequence by hundreds of times a shift, by thousands of nurses across a massive health system. The compounding effect is absolutely astronomical. Every single one of these individual steps actively builds either a more wasteful system or a safer, more sustainable healthcare delivery system. The grand, macro-level accreditation standard is quite literally built on the foundation of these tiny, micro-level workflow processes. Which really brings our whole journey full circle. As healthcare systems across the globe pivot to make environmental responsibility a real strategic priority, moving from boardroom mandates to actual frontline execution, the ultimate power rests right in the hands of the practitioner. Every clinical decision, every supply choice, and every workflow process directly contributes to sustainable care. So, as we wrap things up today, I want to leave you with one final, provocative thought to chew on. Whether you're a hospital executive defining the next era of policy, or a clinician standing right there next to the patient, how will your next micro decision at the bedside impact the global resilience of healthcare?